Good morning or afternoon, and welcome to our webinar designed around Madeira USA's division of easy backing and topping. Thank you for your patience in waiting. We just had a little technical difficulties to work through. Today we'd like to dispel some myths and share some methods and provide you with a solid foundation for solving the backing challenges you face in 2015. My name is Alice Wolf. I am Madeira USA's Marketing Communications Director, and I will be moderating today's webinar. Joining me are two individuals who approach backing from kind of different angles. Jesse Elliott is a digitizing technician with Artwork Source in Tacoma, Washington. Jesse has over 20 years of experience in digitizing and screen printing and has worked with retail brands like Tommy Bahama. Nancy Minnie is a senior marketing specialist at Madeira USA and our resident embroiderer. She's often asked to test thread or to create stitch outs for illustrations or to provide stitched color samples. Together, Nancy and Jesse will be sharing the reasoning that lies behind their thinking when they reach for an easy tear, an easy cut, or a specialty backing or topping. We invite all of you to type in questions throughout the webinar. We will answer as many as possible, but if we don't get to yours, don't worry. We're collecting all of the questions. We'll answer every single one and email to everyone who registered for the webinar. So let's begin. For every garment, every cap, every tote bag, beach towel, golf shirt, any item that is brought into a shop for embroidery to be applied, there's a backing or topping solution. And with the invention of fabrics that are unique to sports enthusiasts, fabrics that were designed for comfort or durability or safety, the challenge to choose the correct backing to stabilize and enhance the finished product has grown. Backing manufacturers have kept up with trends, offering embroiderers more and more choices. In some cases, combining backings or using a topping along with the backing is called for in order to produce the best result. Let's begin with the criteria you would use for choosing your backing. Nancy?
Hello. So here you see there's many elements to consider when choosing the best backing for your project. Fabric type is one of the most important things that you're going to want to look at because, as you'll learn throughout the webinar, if it's a knit versus a woven, that's kind of the first place that you're going to start when you choose your backing. The design size itself and the density of the stitches or the concentration of those stitches is going to come into play as well as far as the types of weights that you're going to choose in your backing. The stitch length can also come into play for the same reasons, and usage is actually very important because, is it going to be laundered a lot? Is it going to be laundered hardly at all? That will, again, help you choose that type of backing that best fits that project. And the color actually comes into play because most backings are white and they work for most of your projects, but blacks are available as well, so those work well with some of your dark garments where the backside might be visible so you don't have a hunk of white, showing up on the backside, and it looks better in a darker color. Beige colors are also available for the appropriate reasons. That's available as well.
As Nancy mentioned, your first consideration is fabric type. Is the item you're embroidering a knit or a woven? The answer to that question will indicate how much stretch you can expect. The amount of stretch will then dictate the type of backing to use. Knit fabrics are constructed by interlooping or connecting loops of yarn with the needle, producing a loop within a loop. They are unstable and often stretchy in all directions. A woven fabric was created on a loom by interlacing the warp, which are the lengthwise yarns, and the filling, which are the crosswise yarns, with each other. The three basic weaves are plain, twill, and satin. Depending on the fibers used in the weaving process, the fabric may be very tight, dense, and stable, or sheer and lightweight. A woven usually does not stretch except when pulled on bias. The arrows, the red arrows here, will show you the direction that each of these types of fabrics tend to stretch.
So here you see many examples of items that are made from knit materials. We just learned that knit materials actually have stretch in most directions. Because of this reason, these types of garments will actually need extra stability, and a cutaway backing generally works well for most of these products. We have a couple of even specialty items in here, like performance wear and your knit caps, but also included in those knits are your sweatshirts, golf shirts, and t-shirts.
Thank you, Nancy. I just want to answer a few questions that came in. One person wanted to know how long our webinar will be, and we're figuring it'll run about an hour. Another question was, is there any way to go back and see the webinar again? Yes, we're recording the webinar, and we'll be sending each of you a link so that you can see it easily. And another question, will we be sending a hard copy of the visuals? And yes to that as well. There will be a link for you to download the PDF pages of this PowerPoint presentation. So let's take a look at cutaway backings. Cutaway backings are soft, non-woven stabilizers that are primarily used for these unstable, stretchy fabrics. The most versatile backing, they are also recommended for lightweight, unstable woven fabrics. The excess backing is trimmed away, leaving a soft feel when worn against the skin. Cutaways come in pre-cuts and rolls in weights that range from 1.5 to 3.1 ounces and are available in black and white. Jesse, I know that you joined us. What would be your choices in approaching some of these knits, like the golf shirt or sweatshirt?
On golf shirts, I would recommend, depending on the embroidery, if it's a light embroidery such as just a little bit of satin stitch or something, not a whole lot of fill, I would just go like a 1.5 ounce cutaway. With a heavier embroidery such as, say, a circle of fill and an outline and some other stuff, I would then go more like a 3.0 cutaway. On sweats, I would go, sweats are more stable. Well, they're heavier fabrics, so they can take more weight in the back, so I'd start at medium to heavy cutaway for most embroideries on sweats.
Okay, thank you.
So here now we have examples of woven goods. And these we learned a couple slides ago. These are the ones where the threads kind of crisscross each other, and there's very little to no stretch on these types of fabrics unless you're pulling on a bias, and that means you're pulling on an angle. So you may get a little bit of stretch that way, but you get very minimal, if any, stretch when you're pulling straight on. So because of that reason, they do require less stabilizer. Examples up here, as you can see, are tablecloths, baseball caps, your tote bags, jeans, jackets, bed linens, and some of your windbreakers as well.
Another question that came in is regarding onesies that people buy for infants. Are they considered t-shirt material? Yes, they would be. And we're going to go into more detail on how to finish embroidery on children's wear and infant wear a little bit later. So stay with us. Tearaway backings intended for wovens tend to feel crisp, so we wouldn't recommend their use on garments that will be worn directly against skin. They're also non-woven and are used for more stable articles that don't stretch, like a heavy twill or canvas or denim. Excess backing is torn away, leaving minimal backing remaining with no distortion to the design. Tearaways are also available in pre-cuts and rolls, and weights range from 1 ounce to 1.8 ounces in black or white. Cap backings are primarily heavy tearaway backings, 2.5 to 3 ounces. Available in pre-cuts or rolls, they are cut specifically to fit in cap frames. The longer ones allow you to embroider on the front of the cap and along the sides. Jesse, what can you share with us when it comes to choosing backings for woven items?
With stuff like denim and twill, jean jackets, stuff like that, the fabric is it's a lot more stable, so you don't really need heavy cutaway, but you would want to generally go with like a light or medium cutaway. In some cases, you can even use tearaway if it's like on a jacket. It's not going to be touching your skin or anything like that. For towels, I would choose a heavy tearaway, sometimes a cutaway, but most people prefer tearaway just because it doesn't show on the back of it. Also with towels, the nap is pretty strong, so you might need water-soluble topping.
Thank you, Jesse. One question that did come in specifically was, what would you use for the Carhartt, those real heavyweight jackets and coats?
Cutaway, heavy cutaway.
Okay, thank you. So we heard just a little bit ago about the tearaway backings that are actually called cat backings. These are really just a heavyweight tearaway backing. They range from 2.5 to 3 ounces generally, and they're cut specifically to fit into the cut frames. They're generally about 4 to 4.5 inches wide, and they come in a various amount of lengths to them. Sometimes they're anywhere from like a 7-inch long to do just the front of the cap. You have 12-inch long ones that you can actually get around to the sides, or you can purchase it by the roll and you can custom cut it to whatever your needs are. It's important, as important as the backing is to embroidering on caps, the digitizing is just as important. Your standard designs are not digitized how caps really need to be stitched out, and that is when you're stitching it, it should be stitching from the center out and from the bottom up. This does prevent flagging. Somebody did ask a question, what is flagging? Flagging is actually when the fabric itself starts pushing over as you're embroidering, and it makes that material fold over and it continues to embroider, and that's what's called flagging. Jesse, would you mind elaborating a little more on the digitizing part of for caps?
No problem. Basically what you have with caps is the frame doesn't hold tight as tightly as a normal hoop. So your most stable area is up against the brim and at the seam. So if you go left to right, you will get that flagging. What's happening is you're pushing the fabric up against that seam that's resisting it. So that's why you want to go left to go center out and go from the bottom up.
Great, thank you, Jesse. One question that did come in is whether or not you would ever use 2 pieces of backing when working on caps. Do you know of any reason why you would do that, Jesse?
Yeah, like at the shop I used to work at, we used to do 2 backings if we only had thin tearaway. So in that case, we would hoop one piece of the tearaway and then have another piece that you tuck underneath it right before you run the machine.
Okay, thanks. One other attendee wrote in about preventing needle breaks, and that's actually a really good question when it comes to caps, because you are going through a lot of material. Some of these caps here, the one on the bottom right, you can see has a lot of stitches in it. And when a needle breaks, it's deflecting because it's just too weak of a needle. So there are special needles out there. Digitizing is important, so that's going to help as well. There's some heavier needles out there. Generally for embroidery, you're going to use a large eye needle, but there are some standard eye needles, and that gives you a little more strength on the sidewalls of the eye. And there's also other needles out there that are titanium, so it gives you a little bit more strength. So those are some of the things that are out there to help you keep from breaking the needles while embroidering on the caps.
Specialty backings will, for the most part, fit into one of three categories.
Actually, we just wanted to talk about the specialty items here first, but then we'll go on to the backings. On this slide, we just kind of show you what we feel are actually specialty items. They might not be things that actually come through your door every day, but most people will see at least one of these, if not more, come through their door. And, you know, they do have their challenges when it comes to backings. And there's special reasons that we're going to be going through in the next few slides that'll give you some more background behind them. But examples like dog collars and leashes, you know, those are very hard to hoop, so we have backings that will help you with that. Halters and leads for your horses kind of fall into that same category, but you've got performance wear where we'll go into a lot more detail because that is a very common product that people are dealing with today. So there's backings out there that are going to work really well for that, and there's actually other elements that you want to consider. Your leather and vinyl bags, your curtains, towels, socks, and things like that. We'll cover that all in the next few slides.
Specialty backings are split into broad categories in order to better describe their purpose. Specialty backings were created to solve the challenges that a standard backing can't. For example, a Weblon no-show, which is a low-profile embossed backing, was designed to be used on performance wear. Another example of flame-resistant backing, those are used in conjunction with fire-resistant thread and fabric when safety is a concern. Jesse, your thoughts, please, on working with fleece, which is a very popular but challenging surface to embroider.
Pretty much for the backing, I just go with a medium cutaway, typically, sometimes heavy. Depending on the type of fleece, if you have too much backing, it will hang and everything. So you don't want too heavy. The other thing is the fabric tends to peek through, and so you will often want to use a water-soluble topping to help kind of keep it from peeking in. There are techniques to kind of help tack it down more with digitizing, but as far as what we can talk about here, I would say the water-soluble topping.
Okay. Different manufacturers have different names for water-soluble topping, which is something that we'll be getting into shortly. Question came in about one in particular. We have a name, and other manufacturers have their own names, but basically water-soluble topping could actually be one of your new best friends, and we'll explain why a little bit later. But probably one of the most popular items requiring special care in choosing a backing is performance wear. We've seen a couple of questions already come in on that. You see it for workouts, for sports, for casual trips to the grocery store. Jesse, what can you share on this popular subject?
With performance wear, you want it to, it's a very thin fabric, very stretchy, so you can work on, you may need to lower your tension, not have it too strong. Needles are often sometimes, make sure the needles are sharp, and if you can go a smaller needle, the better. And with the backing, I recommend the Weblon no-show. Sometimes if there's a lot of stretch, depending on the design, you may want to do an iron-on backing, but try to stay away from that. I mean, that's in the last resort.
Okay, thank you. Nancy, anything to add?
I think you may have covered this, Jesse. Hooping itself is just very important. Can you just go into that in a little more detail? How, you know, hooping is always important, but especially for performance wear.
Yeah, with the hooping with performance wear, since it has so much stretch, the way to do it is basically lay the fabric flat, but don't pull as you're hooping. You want it to be just even without a whole lot of give if you put your fingers on it after it's hooped. You don't want that fabric to move, but you don't want to see the any stretch happen, because what will happen is once you unhoop it after the design, the fabric will snap back and kind of gather around that.
Right. And then one other person asked here, I've been told to add a piece of tearaway backing with the Revlon to keep the fabric from puckering. Is that correct? That actually can help in the embroidering, in the hooping process, so it does, it can aid in making sure that you don't stretch it like Jesse was just talking about. Basically, that tearaway you use with it, you want to use a real lightweight. It's not really there for stability of the design after it's done. So what you do is you lay that tearaway down first, put your Revlon on top of it, then the garment, and then hoop it. That way you can tear away the tearaway, and then you can trim your cutaway Revlon around it. But that can actually assist in that hooping process, and it can also help give it a little more stability during the embroidery process. We're going to move on. We are going to stop a little later on and answer some of the questions that may not have that we may not have been able to answer at this time. But just to keep the webinar moving along, we'll get back to some of the questions a little bit later on. On this screen here, we got wash-away backings. Wash-away backings are actually available in either a cutaway or a tearaway, and they pretty much do have different different uses for them, and I'm going to explain those for you here. A tearaway backing is tearaway wash-away backing. It's been around for a long time, and you would want to use that whenever the back side of the embroidery is going to be visible at times. So you don't see that hunk of backing. Just, normally if you're wearing a shirt or a jacket or whatnot, you're not going to see that for the most part. But things like towels and linens, you want that backing to actually wash away eventually. So a tearaway backing is really great for things like that. Cutaway backings are also available in a wash-away version. And these are more of a material-like feeling to them. They're still a non-woven backing, but they literally do just wash away really easily. And they're for lightweight items, like say you want to do standalone lace, like these little flowers that you see here. These work well with that. It's very similar to like a Badge Master type material. And it's also available in a cut wash away with a pressure sensitive adhesive on the back side. So there's a release paper that you would take off, and then it ends up being the same type of backing as the other one. They're both a 1.2 ounce backing. One has the adhesive on the back side, the other one doesn't. So for standalone lace, you'd use the one without the adhesive. If you're going to embroider on something like really silky, slippery or whatnot, you could actually use the cutaway wash-away backing for that. Also great for garments that have lycra in them, so they have a lot of stretch. Something like a bathing suit or bicycle shorts that you're going to embroider on, you would actually stretch those out and hoop them so that when you're done embroidering and you unhoop it, the design itself is going to look like a big puckered mess until you actually put that back on the body and it stretches out again. So the cutaway wash-away with the pressure-sensitive adhesive on it is a great use for that. Here's just one more example of a really pretty piece of an angel that was used for the wash-away backing as well. We have a real close-up on the right side there where you can literally see all the details on that. And organza was used with this as well, so with some metallic stitching as well. We're going to move on to our stick-on backings here, and stick-on backings are, it's a tearaway backing with a pressure-sensitive adhesive again on it. That's on one side. There's a release paper that you take off to expose that sticky side, and you'd want to use this for your hard-to-hoop items, or maybe it's actually a slippery fabric, again, like the other one. This is a 2-ounce backing, so you want to use this on your heavier fabrics, maybe with your heavier designs, and it can withstand the tearing away afterwards. Otherwise, you want to go back to that cutaway wash-away. You can also use this with the fast frames, and fast frames are those frames that you buy in addition to your frames that you can buy this by the roll, so it's a little wider. And you basically take that paper off and you stick it to the bottom side of the frame so that you have this big area of stickiness backing on the top. You can put this in your machine and you can embroider multiple items on this fast frame so you're not actually hooping it. And then you could say you could do 5, 10, 15 dog collars all at once on the same frame. And we've got a couple questions here that I just wanted to answer while we're still on the same frame here. Somebody asked if you use stick-on backing for 100% spandex fabric. Yep, you actually can use that on it. You want to keep in mind you have 2 stick-on backings to use. You have a Cutaway, which is a lighter weight backing that will wash away, or you have this type of backing that we're talking about here that's a tearaway, that's a 2-ounce backing. So it's actually it's a heavier backing. Yes, again, you can use those coated needles for this. Coated needles or embedded needles, they have a Teflon-like material that's in them, and it helps keep the gum from the actual adhesive here from sticking to the needles. So you can use those here again. But we also want to let you know that there are ways to avoid gumming up of your needles with these types of products. We also throw in here the spray adhesives because they kind of work kind of similar to even the stick-on backings themselves. You just want to make sure that spray adhesive or the stick-on backings don't age. You want to buy them and use them within a reasonable amount of time. You don't want to sit on them for years because that glue does break down over time. If you're using a spray adhesive, you want to make sure that it dries thoroughly before you start embroidering. And you want to make sure that you store both of these away from high heat and humidity. So again, those coated needles will help prevent the buildup, and they are a Teflon-like material that's embedded into the needles themselves. So much like a Teflon coated pan, your food doesn't stick to it. With these coated needles, the gum and the glue does not stick to it. Here we're going to show you how to embroider on the back side of the edge of a garment. Here we're using a curtain, and I'm going to show you how with that stick-on back, and this is a way that you can actually use the backing in order to embroider right on the edge of the curtain itself. So what you would do is you turn your garment over, or the curtain here, and you're going to stick that backing right onto the back side of it. The paper has already been removed at this point. And then turn that curtain back over so it's facing up, and hold on to that release paper that you've torn off, because now you're going to reapply that onto the exposed sticky side of the backing. Once you've done that, you can actually hoop the garment without that stickiness sticking onto the curtain itself. It's always best to hoop garments in your projects whenever possible. The sticky backings are available, or you can actually stick them onto it, like I said, with the fast frames or some of your bigger frames. You can put your small items on it and embroider it. But if you can hoop it, it's always best to hoop it. That's, you're going to ensure that your design is going to come out a little better. So once you've done that, you can embroider the design on it and then unhoop it. And then this is a tearaway stick-on backing, so you can see how easily it tears away. Real easy process here. This design lends itself well. And here you have the finished design up on the top left, how well it looks, embroidering it with even that stick-on tearaway backing, and how well even the back side looks. Has a nice clean look to it. And then we actually have it hanging up in a curtain just to show you how well it looks. And wouldn't that look great in a young sports enthusiast room?
Let's talk a little bit now about water-soluble topping. Many questions have come in, so hopefully this will be of interest to many of you. What it is used for, what its purpose is, and then we'll show you how to make sure all of the topping is safe to remove. Jesse would like to share with you a little bit about choosing when and where to use it, and then Nancy will describe what we call the bubblegum technique. Jesse?
Okay. Obviously, like when you're doing it on, when you're sewing out on fabrics such as that have a lot of nap or pile, like corduroy, fleece, and terry cloth, which is shown there, you will want Solvay It helps keep it from peeking through the design. You may also need to use it in instances of where the satin stitch is feathering out, and what I mean by that is where the satin stitch kind of gathers and bunches up and then separates and then bunches up. Solving is also good to solve that problem. It can also help to use thin weight embroidery thread to tackle the nap and stuff in fleece, corduroy, and terry cloth.
Thank you. Nancy, would you like to describe how to accomplish the bubblegum technique, please?
So probably most, if not all of us, when we were children and chewed gum, you blew that bubble gum, you blew a huge bubble, and you wanted to see how big it can get, and then the next thing you know, it's all over your face. So what do you do next? You take that bubble gum out of your face, and you start dabbing your face with it, and it attaches itself to what's left on your face. So that's why we call this the bubble gum technique, because it's very similar in how you do remove the water-soluble topping that is actually inside the small areas, because it's really just about getting that out in the easiest way possible. So when it comes to the water-soluble topping, you can either hoop it on top of your garment or you can lay it on top. If you're laying it on top, you might need to use some tape to add a little more, make it stay in place. If you have a design that has an outline stitch and it kind of tacks it down, that's going to do quite well. Here, this one had that, so it's actually holding it well. You can see it designed over that. It's stitched out really well over that. And you just simply tear away anything that's on the outside and hold on to that excess topping, because you're going to use it later. On the bottom left here, you can see small areas of where the topping is still left, and it's almost impossible to get that out without it going through its first wash yet. So if you want to get rid of that so that you have a nice presentation to give to your customers, it's really simply done. You take that excess ball of topping that you have, and you're going to spray that, and you're also going to spray or steam. You can use steam for this as well. They both work just as well. But the idea is to moisten out both the design and the ball of topping. It's important that you want to wait just a little bit, because you've got to give it time for that topping itself to kind of break down and get a little moist or sticky, kind of like your bubble gum. So that's something that's really important to do. And then once you do that, you can see in the first slide where I started dabbing it, it started to take it off. One simple dab pulled most of it up. A couple more finished it right up. And then you can see on the right side where it's totally gone. People are writing in about, is it better to use water-soluble topping or do your digitizing so that it keeps it down as well? Both ways are actually practiced within the industry. Water-soluble topping does do a great job. If you don't have the ability to add the underlay that's necessary, you're going to see some later on where underlay really isn't going to do any good, because it's some thin stitches that actually are going to be hard. What the water-soluble topping does is it actually lays the nap down while you're embroidering it. So once you wash it later on, it shouldn't start poking out through there. It's just holding it down while the embroidery is being done. So we're going to move on to the next slide, and this one is all about finishers. They're backing finishers, and they are what they sound like. These are not used in any way to stabilize the garment while it's being embroidered. This is used in conjunction with whatever backing you choose to use for a project. We have two examples here. The pink shorts on the right side had a design that was stitched on it, and in order to keep that from shaping the leg, the backing finisher was added on. Backing finishers have a heat-activated adhesive on the back side of it. And when you feel this side, you can actually, it feels bumpy and it feels rough. And that's because that is the actual glue that's going to melt once you put an iron or a press to it. On the left side, I should say on the other side of it is actually silky smooth, and that's what feels actually nice against your skin. On the left side is a jacket that was embroidered with all metallics on the back side, so if any of that came in contact with your skin, that metallic would actually feel a little scratchy against your skin. So by putting this backing finisher on that, you've actually eliminated that. Here we have a white that's on top of the black jacket itself so that you can see the contrast and where it is. It's also available in a black where you can, it would actually look a little better if you see the inside of the jacket from time to time. So children's wear, sensitive skin, or when you're using metallic threads are, definitely reasons why you'd want to make sure that you're using this. A lot of your high-end shops that have embroidery on it, those will actually put these on there as well, pretty much every garment. So it's a perceived value, so that if you're adding something like this to your garment, you could actually charge more to your customers. Well, somebody wrote earlier about using that waffle or pop-away backing, and here's the screen for you. It is called two different things out in the industry. Some companies call it a waffle, and it is a tearaway. Other ones call it a pop-away. You can see in the detail of the waffle that we have here, it's perforated, and it's made of a material that when you actually tear it away, it's very lightweight, has little stress on the design, and as you're tearing it away, it does have kind of a popping sound to it, so hence the name pop-away. So what you use this for is when you're embroidering on delicate fabrics or delicate designs, and you don't want to use a cutaway backing. This is a great backing to use. We show you a couple of comparisons here. Up on the upper left is a design, the design of a snowflake that is stitched out using a standard tearaway backing. Once that was torn away, because of the nature of the design itself and the fabric itself, it actually hurt the design, and it actually ripped right there. And it was harder to get rid of the backing on the back side. On the right side, it was stitched out using this waffle backing, and as you can see, there are no distortions to the design, there's no tears, and on the back side, most of that waffle teared away, nice and clean. Here we have another backing. It's called Applique Magic, and it is what it sounds like. It's used for embroidering appliques. And the reason why it's great for this is because it is a two-sided adhesive backing. One side is heat activated, so you'll see some shiny dots on the one exposed side of the backing, and that's activated by heat. So you would use an iron or a heat press to activate that. On the other side is a pressure-sensitive adhesive that has a release paper. So this is one method of doing appliques. There are other ones where you actually cut the applique material right on the design itself. This is what you would do if you're embroidering, say you put it on with stick-on, maybe you used spray adhesive, or you use your heat seals or different things like that. This eliminates the need for using it. So it's all in one. What you do is you take the heat activated side and you adhere that onto the back side of the fabric that you're going to be doing the applique part. And then you use a stencil from your run sheet. As long as it's the same size as the actual design, you place that stencil on top of the backing and the fabric, and you cut it out, and you can see way over on the right side is the white heart that is going to be appliqued onto the red pillow. So on the back side of that red heart now is a release paper, and it's sticky. So after you embroider the stitched outline of the design, and before you start tacking it down, you take that paper off and you press that into place right on the hoop, and that's going to stay there nice and firm because it is a stick-on backing. Now you're ready to tack that down with your first running stitch. After you're done with that, the satin stitches will run, and it'll tack that piece of material down nice and firm. This is just another example of an applique design that was used with the same material, the same backing was used on this. This cute little dog here was appliqued with a fake suede-looking material, so that gave him a nice fuzzy look to him. We added a little bit of super twist metallic onto his collar to make that special.
We're going to pause now and take a look at some examples of what can happen if the wrong backing is chosen, and a few other factors that can have a bad effect on your embroidery. Right after this review, we're going to take some more questions from people that are attending, so please hang in with us. Nancy, the first one, we're going to look at badge effect.
Badge effect is actually quite common term that's out there in the embroidery industry, and that is when the backing is too thick for the fabric that it's actually being embroidered on. Here you have two pretty comparable white performance wear shirts, and on the right side you see you can see the white backing, the big circle behind it, and that is actually giving you what's called a badge effect. So it's too thick of a backing that was used on this product. On the left side is the Weblon no-show backing. That's very low profile. It's perfect for performance wear, and you can easily see, I should say, you cannot easily see the backing behind it. It's actually pretty much non-visible at all.
Jesse, how about when the choice for backing produces this effect, when the backing is too heavy? Can you address this slide for us?
Yeah, basically it's, you can't see it too well in the picture, but pretty much it's going to pull the, having too much backing is going to pull the fabric, especially stretchy fabric, weigh it down, that is. And also you will see the edge of the backing because it's so thick.
Okay, the opposite problem would occur when the backing is too light. How about this slide?
With that, obviously, what you have an issue with is puckering. In both fabrics, the thread is pushing the fabric around and everything because it's not stabilized enough with a heavier backing.
Okay, thank you. And the next, Nancy? Oh, sorry, Jesse, one more. Poor digitizing and looping. How about this one?
Well, on this, this is a case of like the first three are showing pretty much what happens when you're going in the wrong direction, and the first picture shows that the fill starts up on the top part and goes down and then goes around and starts from the bottom and goes back up, and then you're pushing the fabric together and having the fabric stop it from meeting, such as in the second picture, and creates a gap. Final result, as shown there, it just looks really rough. It also pushes a little bit out, but in the fourth picture, you will see that it was the fabric was not hooped solidly enough. The fabric was too loose, and so it really caused the same design to warp left from one angle to the other where that fill was pushing out.
Okay, thank you. And now, when topping is needed.
So these are examples here of, they all have two, which is really nice because it shows you the difference. So one with and one without. We'll start with that one on the left, on the red fleece. The design itself is actually was helped with the topping, because you can see in the bottom left one that it has a little bit more red to it. So it did help hold that nap down just a little bit more in the upper right-hand one. But the reason why topping was actually necessary for this one is because of the thin design that runs around the outside and the lettering that's on the bottom. Using the topping really shows most in this part of the design, and you can see how much clearer it is with the upper right-hand one. You can actually read the letters on the bottom, and you can see the design itself. So the topping clearly helped in this one. On the right side, the water-soluble topping was used on the left part of this side. And you can see clearly on the top one with the light blue lettering. They're very thin letters, so that's why the topping was very helpful for this one as well. And again, you can see on the left how much clearer that looks. On the very bottom, we have some thin letters again. This one was stitched on a very heavy knit cap, so it shows up very well. In the center is actually a heavyweight wool blend thread that was put onto a heavy knit sweater, and you can see on the right how the gaps in the embroidery are very visible. It's not very good looking. So once the topping was added onto that same fabric, you can see how clearly it covered. So we have some images of towels there because topping helps a lot with the terry as well.
Before we summarize, we'd like to pause now to answer a few more questions from our visitors. And I'm going to address some of these to Jessie and Nancy. One question, I don't know if many people are working on handkerchiefs and hankies, but the question's come in a couple of times. Jessie, what backing would you recommend for, I'm assuming this is a very, not sheer, but a very lightweight, very woven handkerchief?
Probably with something like that, you'd probably want the Weblon or the tearaway backing that's soft. I haven't had much experience with working on handkerchiefs, so maybe Nancy can help on that one.
I actually have not had much experience with that myself, but I think I would put that in a category with your lightweight tearaway or your cutaway washaway. You always want to make sure that whatever design you're putting on the garment is, or the design is appropriate for the garment. So when it comes to performance wear, we've gotten a lot of questions in on that, and we'll answer as many of those we can during the webinar, and we'll definitely follow up. But you know, we could literally do a whole webinar on just performance wear, and maybe that will be our next one. But as far as those handkerchiefs or anything that's lightweight, you know, you want to make sure that design's not too overpowering for it. So if it's not a big design, a cutaway washaway would work really well for that, because you know eventually that will wash away and it'll look nice on the back side. Another question, going back to the washaway back, and someone asked, does it wash away in the machine? Yes, it does. That is actually the best way to get rid of your washaway backings. The agitation, the water, is what actually gets rid of it. The tearaway washaways, again, being a heavier backing itself, a 2-ounce backing, it could take a couple of washings to get rid of it, and that really is dependent on your the water conditions that you have. Some of your newer machines don't have as much agitation, so that might require that a couple of washes will actually get rid of it.
Jessie, someone has written in, actually a couple people, on lightweight windbreaker. Do you have experience with that? What kind of backing would you use, and how would you waterproof the windbreaker?
Yeah, just a lightweight cutaway. Tearaway, if you use tearaway, it'd probably pucker when you pull it off and stuff, so that's why you would want to do with cutaway. As far as keeping it waterproof, I don't know if there is any way. Well, once you start adding holes in it, you know.
Mm. Nancy wants to jump in there.
I'm going to actually just add on to that. So if you're actually embroidering on something that was intended to be waterproof, When you do embroider on it, what Jesse indicated there was you're actually poking holes in it, so it's no longer waterproof. There's actually a heat seal that has just one side that's adhesive that's recommended to put on the back side of it. So this is used much like your finishers, and it's put on after the embroidery is all done. And this heat seal, once it's put on the back side of it, as long as the material itself can withstand the heat that's needed to adhere it back on, this actually seals it back up again. So yeah, you have to be careful with those weather resistant garnets by putting holes in them. What backing would you use on velvet? The stick-on backing would actually, stick-on tearaway backing would work well for velvet, because things like velvet and satin, when you go to hoop those, they can leave a hoop burn that would actually be difficult to get out, because once you kind of press that area, it seems to have a memory that it holds on to. So using a stick-on type backing, maybe it's on the fast frame, that will help prevent that. So again, you got to watch what you're putting on your fabrics, what types of designs you're putting on there, and make sure that the fabric itself can support it, and know what a fabric's limitations are.
Jesse, I don't know if you've had experience embroidering on halters, horse blankets, dog collars. I know Nancy hasn't, so I'm going to throw this question to you.
Just what to use, or?
Yep. Does it need a backing, or would you just go?
Tearaway, or depending on like what product you're using. If you can't hoop it completely, you will need a sticky back tearaway or whatever. But pretty much just tearaway. If you're talking, you were just talking tackle, right?
Tack for horses, and also dog collars and leashes.
Yeah, yeah. So in those cases, I would probably just use tearaway, medium tearaway.
Okay.
A question came in about needles. Is it more important to use a coated needle or a sharp needle if you're using a sticky backing or your adhesive on knits? Knits, you actually want to make sure that you're using a ballpoint needle, because the difference between a sharp and a ball point is what it sounds like. A sharp needle, you actually want to use that on your heavier woven fabrics, because they're not going to, you don't have to worry about causing runs. When you're embroidering on your knit fabrics, you want to always make sure you're using a ballpoint, because a ballpoint will actually push the fabric away. Most of your embroidery is done with a ballpoint, depending on what you do, but for the most general of embroidery, your knits, your polos, your lightweight dress shirts, the only time you really want to switch over to a sharp point is if you're embroidering on heavyweight woven fabrics, things like canvas, your caps, and things like that as well. I did have another question here. Somebody gave a specific type of 20,000 stitches logo on a 70% rayon and 30% polyester shirt. What backing is good? Because it's 20,000 stitches, I'm going to hand that over to Jesse, because I think you might be able to tackle that one a little better.
Yeah, it sounds like it would have a lot of stretch and everything in it. Kind of depends on the design, but I would pretty much just stick with a medium cutaway, something like that.
And for 20,000 stitches, that would be adequate?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It depends on where that 20,000 stitches is located. If it's all in one concentrated area, you probably would want to go heavier. But if it's scattered around the design, then medium would be fine.
Right, if it's opened up an area. Yeah. So it really does design, a lot of your backing choices do depend on whether you have a high density or concentrated stitches, or if it's open in area. Yeah, I would agree with that. One question came in, should everything be backed? It's my theory that you really should always use a backing when you're embroidering, because that machine that you're running, the industrial machines, they run 10,000, 11,000, and they're even up to 12,000 stitches a minute. That's going pretty fast. The back of the garment, whatever you're embroidering on, is riding back and forth over that needle plate. And the backings are designed to not only stabilize your fabrics, but it helps it move really well over that needle plate as well. So having that there instead of your garment, which may or may not slide smoothly over that, you're going to get better results with that.
It also keeps less stress on the garment because of that.
Great. Okay, thank you. We're going to bring the questions to a halt here. I want to thank everybody for sending in such great questions, and also reassure you, if we didn't answer the question online, you will be getting your question answered via email. But right now, we would like to summarize briefly, and we'd also like to share a couple of specials with you at the end. So please hang in with us for another few minutes. Let's start here.
Our first question here is, the heavier the backing, the better results. Is this true or false? That is false, we learned today. You don't always just want to put a heavy backing in there because it makes the design itself look better. You want to make sure that your digitizing is done properly for the fabric. You want to make sure that the design is appropriate for the fabric. So putting a heavier backing in there, you might be creating that badge effect that we learned about, and you don't want to see that. Nobody wants to see that big bulkiness behind the garment if the garment can't support it.
Always use cutaway for knit fabrics and tearaway for wovens. False. Wovens can often need cutaway. Sometimes it just creates a little more support, it doesn't always work that way. Pretty much wovens need cutaway sometimes rather than just tearaway.
All tearaway backings will wash away. True or false? It's true eventually. The makeup of a tearaway backing is similar to that of a actual paper itself. It has some similar materials in there. And tearaway backings are made so that they actually do break down over time. So depending on how much laundering that garment's going to be subjected to throughout the life of it, it will eventually disappear. So that tearaway backing is going to hold it while it's embroidering, and it might hold it if it's not being laundered well. But just be careful of choosing tearaway backings because of the ease of it.
Jesse?
Use a soft backing like cutaway with metallic threads. True. The reason being, the metallic threads have a core thread with a metallic coating around that, and tearaway is more likely to pull that coating away. So you want something soft such as cutaway.
Cutaway backings will cause less stress on a design. True or false? That is true. We did learn that today. I kind of chuckled a little bit when somebody wrote in that they called the tearaway backing a luxury backing. And that is because it is really nice, tearing it away. They were concerned about cutting their garments as they're tearing it away. There are techniques that are online. I can explain it to you over by voice here, and hopefully I can get it across there. But when you're cutting away a backing, you always want to hold the backing up, and you want to be able to see the garment as you're cutting across it. So you're holding it in a certain way that it prevents you from nicking the fabric. So, that is a concern, but again, you just want to make sure you're choosing that backing so that when that garment goes out the door and they take it home and they wash it and they wear it and they wash it and they wear it, that it actually holds that design really well. So hopefully that will dispel that myth that, tearaway backing is just easy to use and it's more convenient.
All right, it looks like we've run over a little bit, but we all wanted to thank you for the time you spent with us today. We hope we provided you with the answers that you were looking for and enough information to have made it time well spent for you. We invite you to take advantage of these two generous offers from our friends at Artwork Source and Madeira USA. And please remember, again, if we have not answered your question on air, we've saved them all. We have a table covered with them. We are going to answer all that we have not already answered, creating a complete Q&A. We've also recorded today's webinar, so if you would like to review any parts, it will be on our website and also on YouTube. We'll include the link in our email to you. If you prefer the PowerPoint presentation, we'll have a link to that too, so you can download that and refer to it at your convenience. Thank you again for staying with us, and enjoy the rest of your day.